So I heard a few days ago that the Louisville Zoo's Guanaco passed away. I don't normally bring up when an animal at the zoo dies, because, well, death is a normal thing. But this one is different. What made this different was that it wasn't just another Guanaco that passed away. It was the last one that the zoo had. They've had Guanacos at the zoo since the 1970s, and for the first time since then, they have 0. And with none left, that leaves their former exhibit empty, waiting for another resident to take its spot. Now, the zoo has already mentioned that they are already working on what they're going to do with the space, and until then, they're not going to be getting any more animals for the exhibit. But that got me thinking of something. Are they going to get a new bunch of Guanacos, or are they just going to start from scratch with a new species? Now, of course, I don't know. The zoo has never mentioned it, but it's leading me to believe it could happen. But what animals could potentially replace the Guanacos? Well, I've got some ideas. So enough rambling, here is my top 10 species that the Louisville Zoo could replace the Guanacos with. But first, a few things to mention. I know this list might make you think I'm doing this video in poor taste, but I promise you it's not. If a human died, then it probably would be in bad taste, but it's different for animals. This is standard for what zoos do when the last of a species passes away, and an exhibit is vacant. Sure, it's tragic when the last of a species at the zoo dies, and it certainly does affect some people, but now there's a void that needs to be filled with an empty exhibit, now in need of a new resident. We can't have a permanent empty exhibit now, can we? This especially applies to the Guanaco exhibit. It's enormous. It's one of the largest exhibits at the zoo. You can't just abandon it, unless you demolish it and build a restaurant or something, which I hope they don't do. So yeah, the exhibit is too big to abandon, and it needs a new resident. Finally, since Guanacos are from South America, I'm going to try and find animals that are mostly found in the Americas, both North and South. I will also have some Australian and Arctic animals on this list because of the exhibit's close proximity to both the Glacier Run exhibit and the Australian exhibit. So now that I laid out the basic info about this list, let's start with animal number 10. At number 10 we have Guanacos. Now I know this is a very strange choice since, well, I'm supposed to be replacing them with other animals, not replacing them with themselves. But before you comment, let me explain. I picked Guanacos because this could be a scenario where they won't be getting a different animal altogether, but rather just bringing in a new herd of Guanacos. It seems like the most logical choice, especially since at the time of this recording, the Guanaco is still on the map, and it's on the list of all the animals at the zoo. However, it does seem like they might just want to get a new animal altogether. I mean, the Guanacos are just like any standard llama, and aren't the most popular species, but if this is the choice they go with, I won't be mad. Heck, they could even go with another animal similar to the Guanaco, like alpacas or normal llamas. At number 9 we have the American Bison, also known as buffalo. Now if I made this video several years ago, this animal would be higher up on the list, but recently something came out that makes this scenario unlikely. In 2016 the zoo revealed their master plan, and one of the new things planned is a new area named Kentucky Trails, which is an area that will house animals that are native to Kentucky. One of those animals happens to be bison. And just last year, the zoo announced that Kentucky Trails will be the next big project, moving its opening date from around 2028 to around 2025 or 2026. So with Kentucky Trails fastly approaching, it's unlikely buffalo will be in the Guanaco's home. The only way I could see this happening is if the bison arrive at the zoo before Kentucky Trails opens, and they need a temporary home for them. Also, on a side note, can people please stop messing with bison at national parks? I've been seeing that on the news so much, and I wish it wasn't happening. Don't mess with buffalo, please and thank you. At number 8 we have an animal that has a similar situation to the bison, the elk. Again, this would be a good choice for the exhibit, however, like the bison, elk are also going to be in the Kentucky Trails habitat. So once again, the only way this could happen is if it's a temporary setup, until Kentucky Trails opens. But still, this is a nice choice, and I cannot wait to see them and the bison at the zoo, especially since I have never seen them in a zoo as of yet. Number 7 is next, and we have a choice that one of you guys actually suggested. At first I didn't really like it, but it grew on me, and that's a South America mixed species habitat. A mixed species habitat is one enclosure that houses different types of animals from the same ecosystem. Think of an aviary, that's a mixed species habitat. In this example, the animals that would be in this would be the South American tapirs, giant anteaters, capybaras, and rheas. Interesting thing about the rheas is that the zoo actually did have those living with the guanacos for years, up until they were phased out around 2013. You will get to learn about those birds more in my next episode of Former Animals at the Louisville Zoo coming very, very soon. The only thing that could hold this concept back is the enclosure might be too large for these species, and it may be too hard to see all the animals. Also, the tapirs and capybaras require large bodies of water for swimming, and while the guanaco exhibit does have a large lake, I don't think it's deep enough, but I could be wrong. Either way, I love this idea. South America is lacking in species recognition at the zoo, and this idea could change that. At number 6, we have yet another mixed species, but instead of South America, it's Australian themed. This time, instead of housing hoofstock, it would hold both red kangaroos and emus. Now this one is kind of a stretch, because the zoo already has an emu exhibit, and an exhibit for wallabies, so creating a similar exhibit with the same species is a little weird. I mostly chose these animals because on the Wikipedia page for the Louisville Zoo, it mentions that the Australian exhibit will be renovated around 2025 to house red kangaroos and cassowaries. However, obviously, since this is coming from Wikipedia, it isn't trustworthy at all, and most likely could be fake. Also, the zoo never mentioned anything about the walkabout being renovated. Although I did notice the area is closed at the time of this recording due to construction, so maybe something is going on there. Either way, my idea would be to move the emus to the guanaco habitat and add red kangaroos, similar to the exhibit at Kentucky Down Under. The wallabies and wallaroos can stay where they are, but the emu exhibit could now house a cassowary. This one definitely seems the most outlandish, but if something like this does happen, and the Australia section gets new animals, then just wow. We are now down to the top 5 animals, and beginning with number 5 is a cold weather animal known as the Musk Ox. These guys would be higher on the list, but after doing research, I had to lower them. They're probably the least likely out of the top 5 animals. I say this because several zoos have struggled to house musk ox due to them being very expensive and requiring certain fencing. Also, they are cold weather animals, and Kentucky can get quite hot, especially in the summer, and the guanaco exhibit isn't very well shaded. I put them on the list because it would be cool to add a cold weathered hoofstock to Glacier Run. That area, while being the zoo's best area, is mostly dominated by carnivores. Also, having these would make the Louisville Zoo stand out from other zoos, since most Musk Ox kept in zoos are outside the United States. Man, that name is really hard to say. Coming up to number 4 is a similar large hoofstock animal from the tundras, the yak. The yak is more plausible than the musk ox because they are much easier to handle and not nearly as expensive. In fact, back when the zoo was just starting out in the 1970s, they had yaks in the old petting zoo, so they've got experience with the species already. The only thing is, these guys are from Asia, not South America, or Australia, or Europe, so they would be sort of out of place. Although again, they are cold weather animals, so it would make sense within Glacier Run. Also, once again, the weather might be an issue, as most zoos with yaks are in colder regions. Finally, yak like to live within mountains, and the guanaco exhibit just so happens to be a large hill or mountain. So it does sound like having yaks in the exhibit could work. Keyword there, could. Number 3 is kind of a filler choice, but I still like it a lot, and that would be the red deer. This is a strange choice because red deer don't really have a presence in the US zoos, as the ones in captivity are in zoos in other countries. However, I do think these guys are able to live in US zoos. I mean, they are an animal in Planet Zoo you can buy, so that probably says something. I chose this deer in particular because I thought it would be cool to have some European recognition at the zoo, since there's not really much from that continent there, in terms of animals. If they can't get this particular deer, then I would be fine with any other deer species native to the Americas or Europe. That actually leads into my next choice. At number 2 we have reindeer or caribou, whatever you want to call them. That's right, none other than Santa's helpers are my second best choice for a guanaco replacement at the Louisville Zoo. Believe it or not, but I've never seen a reindeer in person before, so I would love to see these guys at the zoo. These animals are the perfect candidate for this enclosure, since it would tie extremely well within Glacier Run. The enclosure is also big enough for the zoo to add a very large herd of them. Now sure, reindeer aren't anything special, but it would still be an awesome choice. Not to mention the zoo actually did have reindeer in the 80s and 2000s, so they already have experience with those. Also, they would make the Louisville Zoo unique, since most other zoos surrounding Kentucky don't have them. But as much as I love the idea of reindeer being added to the zoo, they're not my number one choice. They are probably the number one choice realistically, but this is my list, so I choose another animal for that spot. Alright, this is it. This is the last pick. The number one animal I would like to see in the former Guanaco exhibit is the moose. This choice is definitely out of the blue and very much a stretch, because while moose are awesome animals, not many zoos have them. This is because they are extremely hard to care for in captivity, due to specific requirements needed to house them, such as nutrition, land space, and temperature. Not to mention moose are very shy. Moose also don't live very long in zoos, with some exceptions. So let's see, could this Guanaco exhibit house a moose? Well, it certainly does have a large amount of space available, and if the moose are shy, they can go towards the back of the enclosure, since it's pretty far from visitors. Moose do like water, and while it isn't deep enough right now, it could be modified. As for temperature, they could install coolers throughout the habitat. Finally, for nutrition, I'm sure Louisville could reach out to other zoos asking about moose diets, and even today, zoos are constantly changing moose diets to improve their overall lifestyle. So could this happen? Sure. But will it? Probably not. That does sound like a lot of work for one animal, but it's still a neat thing to think about. Oh, one more thing. In Glacier Run they actually have a moose crossing sign near the entrance, so to have a moose at the zoo would be perfect and kinda hilarious. So there you have it, 10 animals that I think could replace the guanacos in their habitat at the Louisville Zoo. What did you think of this list? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Tell me in the comments section. I might actually do this again when another last of an animal passes at the zoo, so let me know if you want to see that. Hopefully no more animals die at the zoo for a long time. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments section down below. Please like, share, and subscribe. And thanks for watching, and have a wild time. Bye-bye!